Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. Star Citizen Alpha 4.0.1 Live has some major issues. I want to talk about that and a post save Star Citizen from popular French streamer Terada. So yeah, Alpha 4.0.1 has come out to live and it's replaced the 3.24.3 and 4.0 builds. And I was expecting it to be ready for prime time and live. It was pretty good in the open PTU, and I thought the fixes they were putting in were sort of holding up, and more were going to go out before live. Zin and I actually talked about this just before it went live, and she went, it's unlikely they're going to release it to live, or it would be silly for them to release it to live at this stage because it's close to being ready but not ready yet, and it will be a step back. And I think she was right, and CIG have still pushed it out. And CIG, to their credit, they're actively hotfixing and addressing some of the major issues in game, and they're doing it daily, and it should be in a pretty good state, hopefully within the next week or two. But we'll have to wait and see. Some players are having a very bad time in game. A lot of players, though it does seem to be a mixed bag. It appears to be the more densely populated your server is, the more issues are likely to occur, and I seem to typically avoid a lot of these issues. I might just be relatively sort of bug resistant from playing in the PTUs and knowing what to avoid, as well as playing at quieter times during the day. So there's a huge range of bugs and problems, from instability and crashes, hangar and spawning issues, elevator and transit issues, mission cargo inventory issues. Alpha 4.0.1, actually a great patch when it works, but it's relatively meaningless if it only works under very controlled conditions. As I said, CIG have already put out a couple of sets of hotfixes and are pushing out more daily, and I'm very interested in your experience now. Please tell me in the comments below, because I've talked to some people and they're like, no, it's a fantastic patch, best I've played. Other people are like, I literally have been unable to play, can't leave my hangar, I don't understand what you guys are talking about, it's the worst patch ever. So Terada put out this big post, Save Star Citizen on Spectrum, and it's quite lengthy. I want to talk about it, and I'll interject a little bit and talk about some of my thoughts here, but it's important that people share their thoughts and opinions on the direction of Star Citizen and how appropriate and inappropriate they think CIG's marketing actions are and stuff like that as well. And I'm all for that. I come from a sort of bias of, I do genuinely believe that CIG will make a great game, and I trust them to do that. However, there's stuff they get wrong. The development cycle for the game is extremely long. Their marketing seems to be at loggerheads with development of the game sometimes, and they seem very predatory on monetization occasionally. Anyway, to the post. Alright, where to begin? It's getting harder and harder to fit everything into a single post because there's so much to say, but I'll try and organise my thoughts. For Christmas, we finally got the long-awaited 4.0 update, teased and announced for years. After all this waiting and all these delays, multiple Citizen Cons hyping up and showing the world how this patch would change everything. Meanwhile, we've been struggling with the game since at least 3.18. Bugs, instability, outrageous balance issues, terrible ergonomics, all sprinkled with promises that some feature of 4.0 would make things better. 4.0 launched as a preview on Christmas Eve after months of delays in an absolutely disastrous state, getting worse by the day. What was supposed to be the patch of the decade for Star Citizen turned into a complete disaster. You left us through the entire holiday period with an unplayable build. A large portion of the community could barely log in or was stuck in prison. Major game-breaking issues surfaced, and we had to wait over a month for 4.0.1, which was supposed to bring important fixes and quality of life improvements. I can't find the exact source now, but I'm certain I read this from a member of your team. Even Chris Roberts' latest message was reassuring, with good intentions for 2025, focusing on quality of life and bug fixes. So I'll sort of interject there briefly. So CIG did release that 4.0 build to preview, so 3.24.3 was still there on the live build, and the reason they did that was because it wasn't ready and they wanted more feedback. And it wasn't unplayable either. I mean, it was very playable, it was just very buggy. But if you're trying to make actual gameplay content and stream the game, it's going to be relatively hellish. There's a reason that Zin and I don't do much gameplay on the channel, and that can be even with a relatively stable, good build. It can be maybe a few hours of gameplay will give you like maybe up to 15 half an hour's worth of content due to potential bugs occurring. Anyway, back to the post. And now 4.0.1 is live, and it's somehow even worse than the previous version. Honestly, we should have seen it coming. Unlike what I saw on Spectrum, 9 to 10 times more stable, I'd laugh if it didn't mean so much to me. The PTU was empty. Nobody played on it. From the little I did, I immediately ran into the same bugs as in the preview version. I analysed every patch and found no major fixes, no quality of life improvements, just things we didn't ask for or secondary fixes. Okay, I'm slightly exaggerating, but seriously, there were only 2 or 3 worthwhile changes, and they weren't enough. As for stability, how can you possibly assess that when the PTU has a few hundred players at most, while the live servers have tens of thousands? So interestingly, that's not my experience of playing 4.0.1. The PTU build seemed to have a reasonable amount of people on it, at least on the weekends and in the evenings. I know some people were having a terrible time with 4.0.1 on the PTU, but my experience of it, especially later in the PTU cycle, was actually pretty good. Like, it was a very stable, very performant build. So I don't necessarily agree with everything Terada says, but I certainly agree with some of it, and it's certainly his opinion and his experience of it, right? And he plays Star Citizen a lot more than I do, at least sort of gameplay daily. Anyway, back to his post. I don't have your internal stats, but I'm sure they reflect what I see on Twitch, YouTube, and in the community's comments. And everything is a disaster. People are losing hope. Even I find myself questioning things sometimes these days. Now, if we take a step back, some things are obvious. 4.0 was never going to launch perfectly, not with everything it introduces, and in some ways it's a half success. Before going further, I want to acknowledge the developers' work. They did what they could under the circumstances, and in many ways they succeeded. Server meshing works, and Pyro is stunning. So let's be clear, my criticism here is directed solely at the higher-ups, at the decision makers. Now that we've set the stage, let's get down to business. Yes, this is a rant, but I'll try to be constructive by providing arguments and solutions. The release date of 4.0. Releasing this major patch right before going on vacation was probably the worst decision you could have made. We were left with a broken build and a skeleton crew to pick up the pieces. In game development, when something as massive as 4.0 is released, the studio needs to be ready to handle the necessary fixes. I'm not inside your company, I don't know the details, but 4.0 should have probably been released in January, with the full team ready to quickly patch all of the issues from the start. That alone would have massively reduced the frustration of waiting for fixes. The other option would have been to release it earlier, say early November, leaving the last 2 months of the year to address bugs before the holidays. I have a hard time believing there was nothing you could sacrifice to launch it on time. If you think about it, the missionary factor is one of the biggest issues in this build, and yet the devs working on it spent the year on dynamic events that, I'm sorry to say, no one cares about. It wasn't a priority. Save Stanton, Fight for Pyro, that failed blockade runner event, I don't even remember the name of. None of these were necessary. Cutting them or pushing them back would have probably allowed the mission team to work on the actual technology and core missions of the game, which are now missing in 4.0. You know, the ones that keep us occupied all year, not just for 2 weeks when the marketing team wants to sell ships. Which brings me to the next point. Marketing. Stop advertising Star Citizen as if the game is finished. Your marketing is us, the players and content creators. If you want money, there is only one solution: make Star Citizen playable as quickly as possible so word of mouth can do its job. You can run all the dynamic events in the world, release 500 ships at the IAE, sell the Atlas for $400. It won't matter. You have the numbers, you see the data, you know very well that 2024 was a partial failure masked by PR. Stop posting pretty tweets as if everything is fine when half the player base can't even log in. Stop giving us polite non-answers on Spectrum saying there was no wipe in 4.0.1 when we've lost everything: ships, components, weapons, everything. Just be honest. So I want to talk about this very briefly. Yeah, the release of 4.0 obviously hugely delayed, and if they had the mission system refactor and the transit refactor sort of fully done for 4.0, probably wouldn't be having as many issues as we are having right now with 4.0.1. I do think a lot of players actually enjoy some of these events, but I also think that Terada is correct in the actual core of the game needing to be playable for it to reach the largest amount of people and for the player base to want to keep on playing it beyond a quite short-term event. You want the core gameplay loops there so you can keep on playing it each day without going, oh, I can't progress because of a bug. My progress has been wiped. This is 2 hours I've wasted because I can't finish this mission. I've just crashed randomly. I can't even get out of my hangar, which some people are having as issues. I suppose one of the reasons I'm so accepting of some of the issues that Star Citizen has, thinking about it, is because it's certainly not my only sit down and play game. I play loads of different games. And Star Citizen is hugely, for me, about the project and the community, warts and all. But if I was a Star Citizen streamer, I would certainly be a lot more critical of, oh god, this doesn't work. Or at least I'd be more sensitive and it would affect me more, right? Anyway, getting back to Terada's post. Major issues. I really, truly feel like people making decisions don't play the game. I genuinely think they should have spent their Christmas break just playing Star Citizen instead of whatever else they did. I'm sure they wouldn't have lasted 2 days before calling everyone back to fix the major issues. Instead, here we are a month after 4.0's release, with 4.0.1 supposedly fixing a ton of problems. Nope, that's a joke. Persistence. We've been losing our ships, components, and in-game purchased weapons with every update for years. Are you aware of that? Do you think another full reset makes much of a difference to us? You're absolutely right, it doesn't. At least with a full reset, we don't get our hopes up for nothing. If you plan to keep patching the game regularly without driving your players insane, I'd say this persistence bug should be one of the first and most important issues to fix. So interestingly, I kept a load of, or at least most of, or I haven't noticed that I've lost anything from 4.0 to 4.0.1. That said, I didn't have any loot from contested zones in my main account. I suppose one of the other thing is I actually disagree with Terada that persistence should be one of the most important issues to fix. It should literally be playability of stability of patch. I want to be able to play a session, complete missions, and move on. The persistence bug, yeah, people want to know that they're going to be able to not have a reset. At least some people. Some people enjoy resets. But you know, want to know you're not going to have a reset for like 3 months, 6 months, a year, or whatever. And when you get told there's not going to be a reset and you lose a big portion of all of your stuff, that's pretty upsetting. And I know that's happened to some people. And I know some people, it's just certain things they've lost, which they're obviously upset about. It's interesting with sort of like, I can say the game's an alpha. You should expect stuff like this. It is not going to be playable like a proper full-on released game for sure. But as Terada pointed out earlier, CIG do market Star Citizen very much so with each patch as, look, it's great, it doesn't have bugs, it's basically a released thing. Their marketing, their trailers, it is sort of counter to the actual reality of the game some, or at least goes, well, this is the game in perfect sort of settings, very controlled. Anyway, back to the post again. Vehicle spawning. I love my C1 Spirit's ass, but I'd rather not see just that every time I summon it from a fleet manager at the space station. Did you know this bug only happens when you call your ship from the station's main terminal, but not from the hangar manager? So the solution is simple. Have a secondary ship of the same size as your main one, claim it, spawn it to access a hangar, go into the hangar, fighting with a elevator on the road, watch its massive ass emerge from the floor, call your main ship, watch them merge together, repeat this process 3 times until only the correct ship remains, and voila. So much fun, I swear only the most dedicated players go through all of this without rage quitting. Or, you know, would it be too much to ask for a button on the fleet manager that lets us spawn an empty hangar of the right size without forcing a ship to spawn? Missions, objectives not registering, and markers failing to appear. These are critical issues. Yes, so I totally agree with Terada here. This stuff, especially, well, I mean, spawning your ship, not being able to spawn your ship is critical. They're blockers, right? They are things that should have been solved urgently before that patch went out. If it is a more than just edge cases, like if it's common or even uncommon but happening to a good amount of people, you need to hold a patch back until that stuff is fixed, at least in my opinion. Anyway, continuing. I've talked enough about missions ready in this post, but seriously, this deserves a post of its own. Elevators. Maybe it's complicated to get elevators working properly in 2955, but it's time to invest the necessary resources into fixing them. We've been struggling way too long just to reach our hangars. I know the transitory factor was supposed to be part of 4.0, but where does it stand now? Yeah, again, this was something that was pushed out of 4.0, and I was hoping would be part of 4.0.1, but looks like it's a 4.1 thing now. The transit refactor, some of the fixes for sort of server meshing, or the development of server meshing and engineering and stuff, as part of 4.1. Hopefully this will fix a ton of stuff. But again, it's always living in hope of future fixes. CIG do say playability is the focus this year. I'm hoping that is the case. Balancing. You've talked about immersion and player investment in your Vision 1.0, as well as punishing death mechanics. Yet for ages, the TTK, time to kill, has been ridiculously low. And now more than ever, the game's balance feels like a game of Russian roulette. Nothing makes sense. And for years, we've been told, wait for master modes, we'll fix the balance. Well, master modes are here, and every multi-crew ship except the Polaris is a sitting duck in PvP. Fighters getting blown up in 1.5 seconds by shots from behind without knowing where they came from. I know engineering gameplay is coming, but let's be real, you've never managed to properly balance anything with just basic HP on ships. So how are you going to make things work? There are multiple components to factor in, along with physicalized damage. I'm genuinely worried about this. So yeah, again, I think Terada is right about a lot of that and how it's affecting the game now for sure. I do live in hope, and I do trust CIG to be able to start balancing after they've got engineering in and physical components, physical damage, all that sort of stuff being part of that. And I think they haven't actively been balancing properly because they are waiting on that. Gamer access issues. Do I really need to express my frustration over the fact that some players simply can't play, and that once they manage to get in game, they end up either shard locked or stuck in prison for life? Honestly, if you want to make money, just create a mining specialized atlas, make it available in prison and sell it for $200. Maybe you'd actually sell some. But seriously, these issues are catastrophic and need to be fixed urgently. Yeah, anything that prevents you from playing the game, anything that prevents accessibility or transit around the verse, they are blockers. They are the most critical of bugs that need to be solved really before going to a live build. There are tons of problems that need addressing, but I think you're already aware of most of them. I could write 15 posts as long as this one with all the issues, and it still wouldn't be enough. So I'll stop here and focus on a partial solution instead. I had to post in 2 messages to fit it for Spectrum. PTU server population. On the 4.0.1 PTU, I was never placed anywhere other than the shard 010 US. This means one simple thing: there is nobody on the PTU servers. How do you expect to work on stability when the servers are empty and underutilized? This brings me to a major issue with the PTU. What exactly does it offer to players who take the time to act as lab rats? Nothing. I sort of disagree with Terada on that. So people want to test the latest builds and get involved with the development and bug fix. Some people like helping bug fix that sort of stuff. Some people want to get a preview of what's to come, and that's their sort of reward. They're helping develop the game. They're helping bug fix and triage. Also, some of the assertions that they are just assumptions, and we don't have any sort of factual evidence for that, or Terada doesn't there, but that's how that feels to him, or how it's represented to him. And he was like, well, maybe there's no other people playing. Maybe there's not at the time you play. Maybe you just kept being put on the same server. Maybe there's a level of shard affinity there, but maybe there's just not enough people playing in the PTU, at least for what is seemingly a minor 4.0.1 patch. It could literally be just as they split the sort of live build, PTU build, preview build so much that the population of the game is spread quite thin at a time as well when they're going to have less people playing. Anyway, again, back to the post. Back in the day, everyone had access to all ships, especially the new ones. This gave players the opportunity to test ships in the PTU before purchasing them on live with real money. Dollars. Bring that back. Actually, what I'd do is I'd allow people to play on the PTU, and for every sort of hour or 2 hours you get on the PTU, you get a additional ships that you can test from the new ships or something. So you reward players on the PTU by giving them access to some of the new ships, or more and more of the ship pool that's already available to them, just the longer they're on there playing. Something like that, right? That makes you feel rewarded, and you go, well, actually, I'm here to test stuff. So I'm testing, and I can test more the longer I test. Secondly, reputation. It literally takes hundreds of hours of gameplay to rank up certain reputations. Do you really think players want to grind hundreds of hours on the PTU for reputation that won't ever even carry over? Give us a reputation gain multiplier so we can access all the content, or simply set all reputations to 100% upon login. Not only will this help you find bugs, but it will also motivate us to test missions we wouldn't otherwise have access to on live without investing hundreds of hours. And it's quite useful to do this before committing that time on live. Totally agree with Terada there. 100%. give us, really, to be honest, they should give us access to all the ships and max out rep, or give us just max out rep after doing one mission in a particular set or whatever, right? If you want to test stuff on the PTU that's not specifically balanced for getting ships and reputation, then yeah, bam, allow us to test this stuff out. Let us see and tell us what is going. I could also mention the RSI subscription, which could easily be offered to players who have spent a certain amount of time on PTU, giving them free access to upcoming patches along with the usual sub perks. Conclusion, hurry up. I think you're starting to feel it. The community has had enough. What was supposed to be the patch of the decade for Star Citizen is turning into a nightmare. I still believe in Star Citizen, but I've never questioned myself as much as I do now. The criticism from skeptics is getting harder to counter, despite all the promises made at CitizenCon. Play the game, test it yourself. It's not up to us to do all the dirty work. Some bugs shouldn't have been in the game for years. Step up, make us forget this mess, and do it fast. Thanks in advance, and thanks for reading. So yeah, obviously a big critical post of Star Citizen and the way it is now, and I don't think that's a problem. You want these sort of conversations, you want people to be able to talk about the way they feel about the game, and Terada has been covering the game for years and is actively playing it, and finds certain bits super frustrating that should be fixed, should be working, and has been waiting for these fixes to come out. Expected 4.0.1 to fix a lot of stuff, and for him, at the very least, appears to be just as bad, if not worse, in some areas. Game is alpha. That is a bit of a deflection. CIG do market it as a lot more polished than it is. My experiences are not the same as Terada's. I'm having a significantly better time than he is. In fact, 4.0.1 is pretty good, although I am avoiding a lot of the bugs and problems with it, and I have not been playing it a huge amount. I probably have 2.5 hours in 4.0.1 live. Zin hasn't been complaining when I've been sending her off to get footage, though, which she would normally in a broken patch. And for 4.0 and stuff like that, I would like to defend myself. The reason I haven't played much of 4.0.1 on the live build is because I did have a power cut, and I'm catching up on a load of other bits and bobs. So CIG did respond to this as well. Niku, who is the community manager, absolutely love Niku. He's absolutely fantastic. He said, "Thanks for your feedback, Terada. While I can't dive into the specifics on each topic you listed, Alpha 4.0.1 brought a substantial list of fixes and quality of life improvements. That said, we know there's still a lot to address, and we're right there with you. This is just the first of many patches planned for this year, with a strong focus on playability and quality of life, and we're looking forward to sharing more as soon as we can. We're also fully aware of the ongoing issues impacting the experience, especially transit-related problems, and resolving these remains our top priority. We'll keep everyone updated as we roll out further fixes. On that note, we're releasing another hotfix today, which has since been released, which will be combined with yesterday's once testing wraps up, hopefully by tomorrow, unless another one is needed. These fixes will go live to improve stability and support continued development. Oh, maybe those hotfixes that they actually had been talking about haven't actually been released to live yet. That is possible. They might be on the hotfix build and rolling out to servers at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see if that addresses a load of the more pressing issues with the patch. It is a bit of a shame because 4.0.1, it does fix a ton of stuff, and it has a load of quality of life stuff, and it does some cool bits for mining. It seems to make Vulcan work pretty well, but I do think there are loads of especially mine issues, but lots of them that can affect you in quite a major way, especially if you're like, well, I want to spawn this ship, I want to do this, I can't do that. Well, do something else. But I don't want to do something else, I want to do this. I do think CIG want to make a great game. I do think they are hotfixing and trying to solve a load of these issues. I do think that the plan is for a significantly more playable Star Citizen by the end of the year, but we'll hopefully have significantly more playable versions of the persistent universe from patch to patch, and even like later, like by the weekend potentially with these hotfixes. Next week, more and more of these sort of updates improving the game and dealing with at least some of the issues that Terada sort of outlined there. Because some of them I'm just not seeing at all, right? Some of those issues he's talking about feel like, well, it's probably because I'm not trying the exact gameplay he's trying or spawning the same ship that he's spawning. I am really interested to know your experiences of 4.0.1 on the live build now, and if you've got experience of 3.24.3 or 4.0 preview, or even the 4.0.1 PTU, how that differs. Are there points here from Terada that you agree with or disagree with? Feel free to share in the comments. I'm genuinely interested in your sort of feedback and conversation here, but be as concise as you can, or at least be as kind and reasonable as you can. I understand that this can be quite a polarizing topic for some people, but if you're going to be swearing or attacking anyone in the comments, the auto mod will just get rid of your comment. Be kind, be nice, and let's all try to make Star Citizen a better game, and I'm going to do that by talking about it and playing it and looking at patch notes and seeing what other people are saying about it, all that sort of jazz. Very, very excited for the future of Star Citizen, but that's not to say that there aren't issues that need to be addressed and talked about. Something else that you might want to talk about, Toby Eye Tracker, that's on sale at the moment. Natively supported head and eye tracking in Star Citizen. I need to mess around with it in 4.0.1 actually. I will do that later today. But yeah, use the links down below to get a discount on that. We also have NordVPN. I use NordVPN for my browsing on the interwebs. It's part of my security toolbox. It is the best darn VPN I've ever used. Go to nordvpn.com/BoredGamer. Do it. Or the link's below actually. Just click on that. It helps the channel out as well, and you probably need a VPN. Also commenting on any of my videos made during the month of January, which the last day that you can potentially get this, is a Mirai Guardian. We're giving that away. I pick a random commenter, bam, you get a Mirai Guardian. Isn't that good? Please remember to like, share, subscribe, the join button, the Patreons, all that sort of stuff. That all helps the channel as well. Thank you so much for watching. You have a great day. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear from you.